everybody. I'm in the East Coast. Good morning to people in the West Coast. My name is Shaunak Roy. I'm the founder and CEO of Yellowdig. We are a connected learning experience platform. Those of you haven't heard about us, happy to kind of share more details. But today, we have an exciting guest with us to dig into a topic, webinar topic that we launched a few weeks back, Tom Kavanagh. Tom Kavanagh is the Vice Provost of Digital Learning at University of Central Florida. And I'm so excited to have him on the show today because for many reasons, because he is a lifelong learner, has been in this education space for a long, long time, but also has very unique perspective about online learning, being in one of the largest universities in the country. And also, he running one of the largest online programs or hybrid programs in the country. So without further ado, I want to pass it on to Tom Yu. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Shaunak. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and have a conversation. So as you said, I'm the Vice Provost for Digital Learning at the University of Central Florida in sunny Orlando, Florida. Although you may hear some thunder as it goes along. We'll see, fingers crossed. I'm responsible for all of the online learning, blended learning, continuing education, kind of digital learning initiatives across campus. A little bit about UCF, if you're not familiar with us. We're a large public R1 school in Orlando, Florida. We do have an enrollment of around 70,000, 10,000 of which are graduate students. Our online enrollment is around 8,000 or 9,000 of fully online students, but in any given semester, we could have upwards of 20,000 students taking on exclusively online courses. Over the course of an academic year, something like 86% of our students will take at least one online or blended course. And our annual credit hours, when we look at it by modality, this past year, we're in the mid, low to mid 60% of annual credit hours for the entire university generated in digital modalities, online or blended. So it's a significant operation, and it really helps UCF with our access mission.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, I'm so excited to have you today because we are going to dig into a lot of those topics and kind of try to learn as much as possible from you around, online programs, how to design these programs, how to launch it, and how to kind of get them successful. But before I dig into that, when I was researching your background, I saw that you have a hobby. I don't know, on the side, you write about crime fiction. In the past, you have written to, in some very famous, channels like the Disney, the children's channel, as well as Nickelodeon. You've written about children's books and children's shows and things like that. So tell us, is that something completely separate than what you do at UCF, or do you see those two worlds kind of colliding in some sense?
Well, for the most part, they're pretty separate. The television writing career is sort of a previous career. I haven't done that in a long time. I did write a lot of shows for Nickelodeon and others. I worked on a lot of different film and TV shows. Disney Channel. My first job out of college was the Mickey Mouse Club, driving Mouseketeers back and forth from their apartments to the studio. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. But I haven't written for television or children's television in a long time. And as you mentioned, I do have kind of a hobby on the side where I write crime novels. So thank you for the plug. Those of you who like crime novels, you're welcome to check out my website or Amazon. I've had some success. I've won a couple of awards for my books.
That's amazing. I'm sure some of the people who are tuning in today would love to learn about that as well. But today we are going to talk about the other side of your work, which is in the digital learning side. Before we move on, storytelling in many disciplines, like including business management or, any kind of, other areas, marketing and, sales, is such an important topic. So what's your view on storytelling, given your background in writing, in teaching and learning?
Yeah, well, I really think that narrative has an enormous power as an instructional strategy. Being able to make something relevant and meaningful to a student through story can be really effective. So when I think about strategies such as problem-based learning, where you kind of set up a scenario, or the case study method, which Harvard is really well known for, what you're doing is you're laying out a story for students to try to put themselves into, and hopefully meet the learning objectives by solving either the problem in the problem-based learning scenario, or thinking through outcomes, like if it's a case-based learning, kind of a situation in a large class, or working in teams. I really do. I am a big fan of narrative-based strategies that can draw students into the material in a way that just makes it really relevant and meaningful for them.
Yeah, no, it's such a powerful thing, and we see that in our platform as well. Where we see when students are actually telling more about themselves and kind of connecting them to whatever is being taught. They're so much more engaged in the learning process, which is fascinating. With that, we are going to dive into the main topics of the conversation, but we do have a lot of people tuning in for this conversation. So I would definitely encourage you to ask questions to Tom. When you are asking questions, your name will show up, but if you can also mention your institution, I will relay that to Tom, and we have him for an hour. So definitely would want to squeeze in some of your questions towards as we go along. So do ask your questions as we move along. With that, this topic of this webinar is what does Education 3.0 connecting the learning experience mean for you? And before you answer that, Tom, for the audience who are kind of tuning in for the first time, we have launched this series a couple of weeks back, and the first one was with Mark Milliron, who is the executive dean at the Western Governors University. So we had a very good session around unpacking this topic. So do check it out. I think we are going to post it in our chat as well. But Tom, today, given you're in the middle of innovation, running this big, online as well as digital operation, how do you think about the future of education? We are calling it 3.0, but from your point of view, what does the future look like?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's such a broad topic. It's sort of like the idea of like critical thinking. What does that mean? We all agree that it's important, but how would we define that? And this idea of Education 3.0, for me, as I look kind of, if I have a crystal ball of what I think is coming, it's probably an increased personalization of the learning experience across all facets of higher education. So from an instructional standpoint, it's like, how can you personalize the learning experience so that it meets the needs of that individual student? It's something that we think about a lot at an institution like UCF, which is so large. How can we make each student in a very large student body feel like they're getting the unique, individualized support, instruction, assessment that they need in order to accomplish their goals? We've made a big investment in adaptive learning towards that end, along with some other tools. So, this idea of personalization, I think, is really important to engaging the student and to helping them have some agency as they move through, their academic career. But I think it also extends to student services. It extends to the choice of modality. As students can pick and choose whether to go online or to be blended or to be face-to-face. And as we kind of come out of the pandemic in many ways, students' expectations have changed about what they want, about how they want to access education. They've got, I think, legitimately higher expectations for quality. And how can institutions respond to kind of meet these students where they are? Whether that's an adult non-traditional learner with a collection of credits from multiple institutions who's just trying to come back and finish a degree, or it's a first time in college student who needs the flexibility of online learning because they have to work, for example, or if it's a transfer student or a graduate student. Everybody's kind of got their own unique circumstance. How can the university kind of bend itself and personalize what the student needs so that they can be successful?
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And I think the key word also you're using is flexibility, which is, the modern learner, essentially, a lot of them are non-traditional, they have work, so they have other responsibilities. So how do they fit learning in their life, as opposed to they have to fit their life around the learning they're having? So it's kind of it's a reversing almost the equation about how it is delivered to students so that they can actually pursue their careers and their dreams, which is wonderful. And, just to kind of add to that is when we kind of, this whole education 3.0 term came when Mark Milliron, he joined our board, and we were discussing about, we work with so many universities and everybody is doing so much of interesting work in thinking about the future. Then we thought that we have to have a term to kind of bring that together, right? And it's their story. It's kind of, we as a company, we are working with schools, so as many other companies, but we wanted to kind of, coin a term so that if we talk about the innovation in a slightly different way than the work that happens in supporting the existing infrastructure, which is also a lot of work, right? So that's how we came to this term. I'm glad to hear the story of flexibility, which is, I think, a key thing. With that, I think, we want to do a quick audience poll around the challenges in higher education, because we are essentially in the middle of a lot of changes, and a lot of universities are going through a lot of challenges. So if you are watching this webinar, you should see a poll that drop in front of you, and you see there are 5 options available. Enrollment, which is a challenge we are hearing a lot. Faculty retention, there has been a lot of talk about it. Expertise, in-house expertise in terms of launching and building learning spaces or digital learning spaces. Retention persistence has been a problem or a focus area for a long time. Overall economy, we are also in a situation where we potentially could be a recession, maybe a softer economy the next 12 months. So please do vote. We are going to keep it open it's going to be open for another. All right. So I think I'm going to close the poll now, and it looks like enrollment has 33% of people are saying enrollment is the biggest challenge, which, by the way, Tom, I want to hear your point of view, but this is essentially what we are also seeing from many of our partners. They're quite worried about what's happening in the space. And, it so happens that I have a chart that I'm going to also kind of show to the audience around the enrollment numbers. I mean, I had one chart, and it seems like that audience also believes this is one of the bigger challenges. So, and just kind of for people to know what we are looking at here is, this is the enrollment trend over 5 years from spring of 2018 to spring of 2022. We have seen a loss of 1.3 million students in the period of 2 years. Basically, in spring of 2020 to spring of 2022, there is a big drop. And one other thing I pointed out is the first part of the chart, which is the drop seems to be accelerating, which is a problem. You see the last year, we lost about 4.1% overall compared to 3.5% a year before, compared to 0.5% the year before. So question for you, Tom, is I know you don't have a crystal ball, but what do you think? Where is the future heading?
Yeah, it's an interesting trend, and it's affecting kind of all sectors of higher education, it looks like. I mean, I know from community colleges to universities, all across the board, colleges, that enrollment is a challenge right now. I think some of that is driven by the economy. Some of that is driven by just some overall disengagement by students that we've seen. I know it's been in a lot of the literature lately, this whole idea of the great disengagement by students. Some questioning the value of a higher education, some who just kind of got burned out during the pandemic and just need some time. And hopefully we can get them back. I think that there are multiple reasons that might be causing this trend, which means that there probably will be multiple responses to try and get out of it. It's probably a multifaceted solution set that we might need in order to try to attract students back into our programs, into our institutions.
Yes. No, there are quite a few things that are playing out. There is a question in our Q&A. How much is demographics affecting enrollment numbers?
It's a good question. I'm not sure what the exact stats are off the top of my head. I'd have to look them up here at UCF. What we are a minority majority institution. We are a Hispanic serving institution. So, when we have an enrollment impact, which we are having a little bit now, I don't think ours is quite as bad as some other places, but we are impacted by it. Because of our demographics, it tends to impact the underserved populations maybe at a higher percentage than at some other schools. We also have a very large percentage of Pell eligible students at our institution. So, the ones that are probably most impacted are those that probably can least afford to have issues come up, have the least margin in their lives, the ones who suffer from scarcity, if you're familiar with that concept. That the slightest little thing is going to knock them off course, and it's really hard to get back. So demographics does play a role, but I think a lot of it depends upon the institution.
Makes sense. And does online versus in-person enrollment, do you see any trend there where online is probably not probably growing or staying stable? Anything there that might be worth mentioning?
At least just recently, I would say the last 2 semesters, as we track our UCF online enrollment, it's been up and down, to be honest, after several years of just like rocket ship growth, where it's been, just hold on for dear life. What we have found recently was that there's been a softening of the market. Getting currently registered students to enroll. We keep reminding them that we want them to finish, and supporting them in all of the different ways that they need support through our success coaches. But we actually have seen a little bounce back for the coming fall semester. Our new student enrollments are much better than they were, I would say, in the spring, when we were last kind of pushing for new students. So it's an odd market right now for student recruitment and enrollment, because of I just think that the marketplace, the student population, the kind of landscape of higher ed is still kind of suffering from some post-pandemic aftershocks. And where it will all settle, I think, is to be determined. But I'm seeing some positive trends in the online space, at least, especially with our new student enrollments.
Got it. No, thanks for that answer. So I think, with that, kind of moving on to a topic which is, so there are some things that cannot be controlled, right? For example, enrollment numbers, some of this, it's not always in the hands of the institution, but what is in the hands? So as a leader in the online space, where are you focusing on?
Yeah, well, for me, I think it kind of boils down to a couple of key tenets. The first thing is you have to make sure that what you're doing is mission aligned. Are you developing online learning and online programs for the right reasons, and is it supporting the institutional mission? If your one and only goal is revenue or to just make money, I think that you may end up getting yourself in trouble, because it's just such a competitive space right now. Having an online program alone is not a differentiator. Everybody's got an online program. So it needs to be really supportive of the institutional mission, whatever that might be. Maybe it's to create, to serve a particular market in a local area where there's a working student population, so adult learners or something. And so you need an online program to create the access and flexibility for people who can't come to class at 10 o'clock on Monday and Wednesday. Or maybe it's you need online courses because your general education service courses are just full and you need to increase the pipeline. So you need online options for your actual on-campus students so that they can move more quickly through your program. Those are 2 very different use cases of how to use online learning, but they're both really important if that's what the institution needs. The second thing I would say that's really important is to just not lose focus of quality. I think it's really easy in online learning to kind of outrun your supply lines of quality. You can create a learning management system shell, super easy, create a million of them with the click of a button and then just tell faculty, okay, there you go teach. Well, that doesn't mean what they're going to teach is good. It's all of that infrastructure of faculty development and media support and instructional design and all of the different disciplines that go in behind the scenes to help support the development of that course that's going to make it a good course. It's not just the ability to replicate an empty course shell. But I think that it's too easy to do that, and there's a temptation to just press the button, create the course shells. I think that was exacerbated during the pandemic with the proliferation of kind of Zoom school. Zoom is just, and not to pick on Zoom because we used it. I think it's a great tool. We're in it right now. I'm a fan. But, during the pandemic, it's so ubiquitous and it's so easy to use. And so many faculty were able to avail themselves of it. To their credit, our faculty, I thought, did a heroic job of adjusting to really extraordinary circumstances and did a tremendous amount of good in keeping the classes running. So this is not a criticism, but as we move forward, having this as the only instructional mechanism when we don't have to, I think that we need to look at the quality infrastructure so that we design both asynchronous and synchronous experiences that are at the highest quality we possibly can. Now that we're no longer under the pressure of everybody needs to be remote next week, which is what we were dealing with at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. So this idea of quality, I think that's critical, and marrying that to the institutional mission are the things that I try and keep in front of mind as I try to position our organization to support what our president, provost, and board are trying to do.
That's great, and I'm glad to hear this whole quality message, because it has been for at least for the life 5 to 10 years. I mean, the launch of online programs, of course, the market was in the initial phases, so going and getting market share was a thing. But now it's getting overly competitive. So it's at the end of the day, the quality will matter a lot, especially in this day and era where students can actually go to, social media and kind of share their experience with their peer group who are going to use that experience to come back and enroll to a program. So that is a very important message. And this is something that we also, our mission as a company as well, because we help universities to improve their overall learning experience by connecting the learning experiences as much as possible. To your point, which is, essentially, synchronous versus asynchronous, in classroom versus not. But from a student standpoint, it needs to be a very unified experience. Doesn't matter if they're in campus or they are maybe at a job somewhere else, they live in a different, city, they should have enough kind of opportunities to connect in a very seamless manner. And that's kind of what we are working with our schools. But, to your point, I think the quality part is so important. Now, question for you. So how do you design a high quality online learning experience? I mean, going back to the instructional design side of things, and the underpinning of this question, Tom, is from our work, we have seen that a high quality experience is a good combination of high quality pedagogy with high technology choices. That's not always easy to do because there's a lot of things that goes into making those kind of design decisions. So how do you kind of go about doing it for your institution?
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that there's one recipe that everybody should follow, but I do think that there are probably some core tenets that everybody would probably agree with. Some of the things that we do here that I think have been really effective is we put an enormous emphasis on faculty development. We spend a lot of time preparing our faculty to teach online and then supporting the heck out of them once they've kind of been through our training with ongoing training and ongoing support. We've got a pretty large team and it covers everything that you might imagine, such as instructional design, video production, graphics, programming, help desk support, everything soup to nuts that a faculty member might need in order to produce an online course. But it's all mediated through the instructional designer. So they don't access the video team without going first through the instructional designer. And when they do that, the ID asks questions about, well, what are you trying to accomplish? What are your objectives in this? And if they say, well, I need a video because I want to do X, Y, and Z, they might turn around and say, well, have you thought about an instructional interactive game? And that seems like it might be a better strategy to accomplish your instructional objectives. And the faculty member 9 times out of 10 was like, I didn't even know that was possible. That's way better idea. So the idea is to bring value and create a vision of the course that even exceeds what the faculty member had in mind. And it's only through that expertise that the instructional designer has that we can kind of bring that value add to the process. So everything tries to be mediated through that ID. But then, as I said, we've got everything else as far as course production, delivery support through help desk support, student success coaching for our UCF online students. And then we assess everything. We've got a small team of super powerhouse researchers who have been doing efficacy studies longitudinally since the mid-90s on all of our digital learning efforts. And so we've been able to keep track of what works, what doesn't work. All of our pilots get assessed to determine if it's something that needs to be tweaked or scaled or shut down. So that kind of virtuous cycle, starting with kind of strategy and instructional design, all the way around to the assessment, and then that feeds the strategy again going forward.
Yeah, that's an amazing setup. It's and what we have seen is schools or universities that have that measurement approach, they probably tend to make, because not everything works, as you said, right? Some things will work, some won't. It's just hard to know which one is working so that can be scaled up. And that approach makes a lot of sense. Now, question to you is, in our audience, I'm sure there are institutions that are just getting started, let's say, within launching a hybrid program and an online program. And the whole setup, it has come together, I'm guessing, over many, many years to kind of build this capability. So if you were to do this again, let's say for a school or university, how would you go about it? What are the steps that needs to be the first thing you need to do, and then then move on and kind of build around other capabilities around it?
Yeah, it's a great question, because you're right. We didn't start with 100 people or whatever we have. We started with like 3 before my arrival, and I think that it goes back to this question of mission alignment. So first of all, why are you doing it? And if you set it up in the right way and do it for the right reasons and execute, the financials should take care of themselves. So I would say, again, the mission alignment and quality. And so what do you need to do to establish that quality? And that's to ensure that your course delivery and student support infrastructure is maybe first. So making sure your faculty are prepared to teach online, ensuring that you've got quality built in. And in some cases, that might mean like a template course strategy where everybody teaches from a single course design. We don't do much of that at UCF for a lot of reasons. As an R1, we've got a really strong culture of faculty autonomy and academic freedom. We do have cases of it, but they're more the exception than the rule. However, at another institution where I worked, we did use kind of this template course model, and we used it as a quality assurance measure more than anything else. So, for example, we had a lot of adjuncts or contingent faculty that would teach for us. The template course ensured a minimum standard of quality was delivered at all times, because the quality was sort of baked into the template, and they had kind of very limited margin for changing things based on the template. Now, however, we did have a robust sort of feedback loop so that those who taught the course could provide input to the course designer, the faculty member who owned that. And then on like an annual basis, it would be updated based on that real world delivery experience. But those are 2 different strategies to accomplish quality. So there might be multiple ways to get there. But if you were going to be starting from scratch, you need to figure out what the one is that's going to work for you and your institution and what your resources can support.
Awesome. So, in other words, the online or the hybrid portion is an extension of what you're already offering. It's not a separate program. And if it's high quality, if it's more flexible, it's anyhow going to reach to more students, and that's going to anyhow grow the program. So it's not kind of creating a separate thing, which is kind of it's not mission aligned to your core goal as an institution. So that's it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of difference of opinion about, should an online unit be mainstreamed into the regular academic enterprise, or should it be stood up as its own separate kind of thing within an institution? And I don't think there's one answer for that. I think it depends upon the institution. It depends upon how these entities are funded. It depends upon the resources and the political will, the culture of the institution. So, I mean, there's a lot of variables, and what works at one institution may not work at another. And then there's hybrids between both of those extremes. So, whether it's centralized or decentralized, mainstreamed or separate, or kind of stood up as a skunk works or something, all can work depending upon how they're set up.
Awesome. I do see some questions in our Q&A around Yellowdig, very specific to Yellowdig. So I'm going to address those towards the end. And then also we have some separate webinars coming where you will see exactly how our platform works. I just wanted to kind of let people know. So Tom, next question is close to what Yellowdig does. And I want to get your point of view, which is what we as a company, we are focused on building connections between the students when they're in the same class, so that they're interacting with one another, peer-to-peer, with the student and the faculty, so that they get access to faculty 24/7, and the faculty can get access to the students whenever they want, and also to the resources, which is in the World Wide Web. So the students can bring in examples from all over the place. They can create their own content. And these connections doesn't have to be only in the courses, right? These could be also outside the courses. So right the day a student decides to come to a university, they can get connected with the existing students, their advisors, so that they have more belonging before they even show up. And then as they move through the process, they can be part of other clubs and many other things that they're interested in. So that's the mission we are kind of building towards. And we are one company in this space. There are other companies which are trying to achieve this. What's your thought on the need for connections for the students? What's your kind of philosophy around it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that it's a core element of an engaging course, regardless of modality. It's been said that learning is a social enterprise, and that kind of social interaction can't really happen without the idea of connectedness. So it can take a lot of forms. So, for example, at a very kind of surface level, at our online courses, we try to cover all the different kinds of interactivity and teach faculty about that, and encourage them to include as many of them as possible that make sense for their learning objectives, whether that's student to faculty interactivity, student to content, or student to technology interactivity, and then student to student interactivity. And that might be the biggest challenge, the student to student interactivity, because it's really important, whether it's in a discussion board or through a tool like Yellowdig, or in a group work or some applied project that they have to do. They're 9 times out of 10, they're going to get out into the workforce and have to work with other people, maybe more often than 9 times out of 10. And this is a great way for them to kind of develop those skills, kind of be pressure tested under the intensity of a grade, and hopefully accomplish the learning objectives that the faculty member has set out.
Thanks for that response. And the human factor is also important. Like, learning is by definition a human activity, and all the interaction kind of brings that human element to every learning environment. We see that quite often, and I think you kind of mentioned that also in some sense. With that, there's one other question, and I do see more questions pouring in on the product side. We can address that too. There is this debate right now in higher education between building versus buying, which is, essentially when you're starting an online program, there are of course OPMs that you can work with. And then you can also incorporate technologies and other solution providers like Yellowdig and others. How do you go about, and this is a topic because some of these companies are for profit versus not for profit, and other public institutions. What's your thought around forging partnerships in this space? How do you go about it? What do you look for? What are the ways you can filter out the right partners for your institution?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one I'm confronted with all the time. And if you'll permit me one little shameless plug, I do have my own podcast that I co-host with a colleague here, and it's called Topcast, and the Teaching Online Podcast. We did an episode not that long ago on this very topic, on build versus buy. So if anybody wants to go deeper into my thoughts on that they're welcome to go take a listen to that. But in a nutshell, I would say that there's no hard and fast rule. I think it really depends. So for example, on a tool, is it something you could build yourself, or does it just make more sense to outsource that? Where does the expertise lie? I remember fairly early in my tenure at UCF, I had a colleague. She ran kind of the help desk support folks, all of we call them the tech rangers that work with faculty and others to build courses, and they do a lot of our programming. And she wanted to build our own LMS. She felt very confident that they could. And I'm not opposed, right? I'm sure that she could, and I'm sure that the talent of that team was capable, but it just did not seem like a realistic proposal to entertain, that we would want to build our own LMS and support it when we could buy that as a commodity and have it supported 24/7, especially at the scale which we operate. We need to be able to call somebody at 2 a.m. who's going to answer, because we've got 70,000 students that need it. So that's just like a real easy build versus buy. I think maybe a harder, maybe more nuanced one is your OPM question. We currently don't work with a traditional OPM for our academic programs. We've got some other kind of specialty things in boot camps and some others that we do. But when it comes to a regular academic program, we don't. We made a decision to insource, but a lot of that is driven by our context. We've been doing this since 1996, and we already had dozens and dozens of fully online programs, and a team of 100 people who can help support faculty build it. And so it didn't necessarily make as much sense. We just had to kind of acquire the marketing and student support resources, or at least redeploy some of them to support the online initiative. Not every school is in the situation we were in when we were confronting that decision. So if you need speed to market, if you don't have the capacity or the capital, OPM can make a lot of sense. So I think it really just depends on the institution and on their own particular circumstances. Maybe one last example, we are building right now a learning analytics tool within the LMS for our advisors, so that they can get a sense of maybe which students are most at risk. And we did look in the marketplace, and there are some decent to good product options out there. And we considered buying one of them. But at the end of the day, we felt like our needs, our kind of list, our checklist of things that we want kind of exceeded what some of those commercial off-the-shelf programs were able to offer. So we made a decision, we're going to build it. And that's what we're doing right now through some LTI integrations, and have devoted some team resources, and so far so good, but it is iterative, and it's going to be slower than it is if we had bought something.
Yeah, no, awesome. And one of the things we see from our client base is we have APIs available, and very often they will use the API to build something very custom modeling around the data or other things. So I think having that internal capability to kind of focus on some strategic areas makes a lot of sense. And we see that because not every tool will, is going to be customizable to your needs, as you would have. There's a question from Kevin Henley, is around accessibility. So how do you incorporate accessibility and support accessible content?
Yeah, I assume you're talking about kind of Section 508 disability accessibility. And it's a big commitment that we have. We take it real seriously, and not just in a risk mitigation way, but in it's the right thing to do kind of a way. Again, we did a podcast episode on that if you want to look in the archives. So at a really high level, I would say our strategy kind of falls under this umbrella of accessibility. And then, under that, we have things that faculty can do, things that we as a centralized unit can do, and then there's an overlap in between those. And we work really hand in glove with our Student Accessibility Services Office, as well as with our Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning, to make sure that we are doing everything we can to make our materials accessible, whether that's adding captions or to videos, or in teaching faculty how to give extra time to students who might have learning disabilities and need that for their tests. We actually even went so far, we got a grant from Instructure. We use Canvas LMS to develop a tool that we call UDoIT, UDoIT, that is open sourced. You're welcome to go take a look at it, and it allows you to do a check of the accessibility of your course. And it even gives you the opportunity in many cases to just fix that immediately in the report. So for example, if the report comes back and says you don't have alt text on this particular image in your course, you can click fix it right there in the report, and it opens up a text entry field where you can add the alt text. So you don't have to go back into the course, find the file, or go into the HTML code, or whatever the case might be, to add the alt text. You can do it right there from the UDoIT accessibility report. The faculty have really loved it, and it's allowed us to be even more compliant than I think we were before, but also to ensure that we're doing the right thing for our students who need those kinds of accommodations.
Thank you for that answer. There is a question about Yellowdig, and I know we have started a pilot with UCF. It's in the process right now. The question, I don't know if you have anything to share there yet, or if you have any data, but the question is around what is the most impactful way Yellowdig is being used at UCF around student intros, non-academic connections, broadened engagement in online discussions, peer-to-peer coaching. Anything that you can share there, or maybe the reason you decided to kind of adopt a platform like Yellowdig?
Yeah, well, the actual pilot, I would say it's premature to talk about how we're using it. This summer has been kind of more planning for the fall, where we're actually going to kick the tires in a really meaningful way. But I will say the reason why we started looking at Yellowdig and other products like it is because we felt, it goes back to your connections question. We felt that students needed a way to connect in the online discussion space in a deeper, more meaningful way than they were through the out-of-the-box LMS threaded discussion tool. So we're going to try that, and hope that that students will be able to have those maybe more meaningful, more engaging kinds of interactions than they've been getting traditionally, despite our best efforts. And we also want to try and make it easier for faculty, especially in larger courses, so that they can give students in a larger course the same kind of more intimate, interactive experience that they might get in a smaller course. In a school that's large, we do have some sections that are maybe larger than we might like. We don't want any degradation of experience for the students. So, we're looking to technology to try to help us personalize at scale, to kind of go back to my original answer to your Education 3.0 question. How do we continue to personalize the experience for students? Well, if you were in the old, Oxford, Cambridge tutor model, where it's just you and the senior faculty member, you can customize that all day long. That's great, but it's not scalable. So we feel like only through technology can we have that kind of personalization at scale. It's one reason why we've been looking so hard at adaptive learning and putting so much emphasis there.
Got it. There's a question around, and I want to get your reaction. I can share a little bit as well, is like, how is Yellowdig different from other tools like Inscribe, Canvas, Harmonize, Perusal? And I know, UCF went through some sort of a vetting process to select Yellowdig. I don't know if there's anything that you, want to share there. And the other second part of that question is, how easy or difficult it is to get buy-in from faculty to try something new?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the comparison we started with a committee of faculty who looked at about like 20 different products. And I will say that there are a lot of good products out there. And there are advantages, I think, to all of them, and we look forward to the pilot with Yellowdig this fall. As far as what was the second half of your question again?
How do you get faculty adopt new technologies?
Faculty buy-in, yeah. That's always the challenge, right? Because even though I think faculty, they all genuinely care about their student success, and they want their students to be successful, they're all super busy, right? So if I show up and say, hey, Professor so-and-so, I have this great opportunity for you to try this particular piece of technology and it's going to help your students, they might say, great, I don't have time to learn it. I don't have time to, get a course release or something and redesign my course to incorporate it. It's finding that time in their lives can be really a challenge. I have on a couple of occasions had some funding, either from our board or from grants or something, that we could use to buy out faculty course load or something so that we could create the time in their schedule so they could innovate. And when I've had that, it's been enormously successful because faculty finally said, yeah, I'm game. If you can clear this space for me, I'll innovate all day long. And then of course we provide all of the support with them. Finding faculty volunteers. We do have sort of our regular crew that we go to and ask for help. It's hard to go to that well too often because you don't want to abuse their kind wishes of trying to help us out. But in many cases, they're just genuinely curious and do want to help and try new things. So, we sort of lean on them in many cases to try things out and give us feedback. And then, I will write letters that go into tenure promotion files for faculty about their commitment to innovation and to student success. And that has some currency for them as they're going up for promotion. That they've got this documentation of their commitment towards these things that we say are important.
Oh, that's great to know. I think, as you said, like commitment towards training and development and actually making it a priority for them so that they can actually spend the time is such a big thing. Outside of that, I mean, there are some comments here which kind of broadly talks about Yellowdig, and I think what I would say there is, just to kind of quickly respond to some of the questions around how Yellowdig works is, what we have done is that we have taken the technology part of social media and applied pedagogy on top, which is why it kind of makes it work the way it does. And there's another question around what aspect of the learning experience changes immediately when implementing Yellowdig. Given, UCF is in the early stages of the implementation, I think one thing I would say there, just to kind of respond to that question is, the big thing that happens is students are a lot more engaged. So, they're naturally more engaged and they're interacting with one another, which is not that common, especially in the discussion board based framework. And that's kind of most of our clients say. With that, I think we are coming towards the end of the session. I'm going to reshare my screen. So just to kind of quickly mention that this series, we have some exciting speakers today. We have Tom Kavanagh, and we have Karen Vignair, which is on August 22nd, and then we have Shukman Jha on September 12th. And so please do sign up to this webinar series. And this series, we are covering different topics based on the speakers, but very similar sessions around focused on Education 3.0, connecting the learning experience. And many more sessions coming. So you can find us in our website. If you go to yellowdig.co and look at events, you will see that there are many more exciting speakers who are lined up till the end of the year. And the reason we are doing this, just so that everybody understands, is this session is more focused on learning about our partners, the kind of initiatives they are, focusing on, how they're going about, implementing new technologies and kind of building the future of learning. It's not so much focused on the Yellowdig product, but we do have dedicated webinars that we do on the product where we invite our clients, our users to talk about our features and functionalities and how exactly they are seeing value. So if you're interested in that, definitely check out our website. In our website, there is a webinar section and you can sign up for upcoming demos and upcoming webinars on the product itself. So this is a screen. If you want to just scan the screen and sign up for this series, you can do that. Just take a picture of this and you should be able to get going. With that, I think we are going to bring to an end. So finally, Tom, it was really great to have you. I mean, with somebody with level of experience, I mean, it's always to unpack your side of the world and how you kind of manage all the things that you manage. Is there any final words that you want to share before we conclude?
No, thank you so much for the opportunity to share a few thoughts and talk about our experience here at UCF. And we look forward to the results of our pilot this fall.
Awesome. And then we'll get you back to,
Fair enough. Yeah.
to share about that. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody who could join today, and have a good rest of the afternoon.